Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and today we're going to talk hopes and concerns for Star Wars Battlefront. Of course, the brand new Battlefront being developed by DICE and EA. The Battlefront franchise as a whole has seen kind of a really long, just, history. You know, the first two games were considered to be like some of the best Star Wars games you could ever possibly play, and then Battlefront 3 kind of never really happened, and just recently we heard that it was actually in development, and we saw a ton of leaked gameplay footage of early development code, which looked amazing. There were space battles, there was a lot of really promising elements. So, when DICE and EA came out and announced their Star Wars Battlefront, and it was missing a lot of those components, it was very easy, I think, to be jaded by everything and just kind of say, wow, you guys can't even develop anything along the lines of what was still in early development, going back to the days of what was supposed to be Battlefront 3. I think it's very easy to say that. At the same time, Battlefront 3 was never finished, so who knows what sort of complications that team saw while attempting to develop all those different components. I think it's easy to look at that, but I want to avoid looking at what we know about Battlefield 3 and all of the components it was going to contain. While we are going to talk a little bit about that, because I do have some issues with what is going to be contained inside of Star Wars Battlefront, I also want to focus on the positives, and of course, focus on the things that I think look really great when I look at what we've seen of Star Wars Battlefront as it is being published and developed by EA and DICE. So let's start with the positives. Of course, right from the get-go, we have all of this crazy, direct Lucasfilm sourced content. So we have, sound straight from the Lucasfilm's vault. We have character models, 3D models that they were able to work off to import into the game directly from the well, I guess you'd say it's Disney now. I shouldn't really say Lucasfilms. I'm not really sure how that thing goes anymore, but directly from Star Wars. These are actual models of the lightsabers, of the jetpacks, of the, the stormtroopers' armor that they've been able to base their models off of to put inside of the Frostbite engine. So it's definitely going to be the most visually and it's going to be the most audio-visually correct Star Wars game that we've probably ever seen. And that's definitely a plus, because when you saw the first gameplay of Star Wars, the Battle of Hoth for Battlefront, it sounded amazing. I mean, right there, that's enough to take any fan and kind of just put them in a happy place. So they have that going for them, but of course, that's not everything that makes up a game. It definitely makes me very happy to see the sound design being handled so well, and of course, the Frostbite engine has always been a very beautiful engine. Even on the older consoles, it looks great. And of course, if you have a high-end PC and you can really push it, it still looks wonderful. Interestingly enough, the footage that we saw was actually on the PlayStation 4, and it still looked really beautiful. So whether you play it on the current gen or your PC, you're definitely going to get a very pretty looking game. And if there's one thing that the team at DICE has always been very good at, and something that they've always pushed for extremely hard, it's audio design. Going back to the days of Bad Company 2, DICE has always been about audio design. It's something that means a lot to them inside of their Battlefield games, and I feel that despite the issues that Battlefield 4 has had and Battlefield 3 has even had, audio design has been something that DICE is definitely very, very good at, and those games have had amazing audio. Some of my best moments in a Battlefield game were definitely due to the sound design. They kind of helped encompass whatever that moment was, whether it be a tank crashing through a wall or a missile streaking down a street just barely missing you and taking out a Humvee behind you. The audio design is a big part of what makes those Battlefield moments so wonderful. So I'm hoping that the sound design, not just being the sounds that we've come to love and know from the Star Wars films, but also just being really well-designed sounds from DICE, will make sure that there's no doubt in your mind when you're playing that you are indeed inside of a Star Wars game. So that's definitely going to be something that's very exciting. And as I said, Frostbite's a really great looking engine. The game looks fantastic. I don't think we have any concerns there. I think the biggest place to turn to start looking for concerns, of course, is all the different gameplay mechanics and how it's actually going to pan out once you start trying to play this with a group of friends. And that's really where I wanted to start first and foremost. I think there's a lot to talk about. This is going to be one of my longer hopes and concerns. But the game is using, at least what we know so far, a buddy system. So the idea is that you team up with one other player, your friend, and you guys kind of level up, you share unlocks, and you can have each other's back on the battlefield. I really like that idea. I think that's really, really cool, teaming up with like another friend and going into it. But the way a lot of people have been looking at the announcement of this buddy system is that there's not going to be any way to communicate with other members in the team, and it's just going to be really bad teamwork, and, teamwork should be a really big part of this experience. And I agree. I understand those concerns, and I think that we need to learn a little bit more about how in-game chat and just the way things are going to work when you communicate. However, I'd like to point things out this way, and I've always kind of looked at teamwork in Battlefield with this sort of attitude. If you want to play with a group of people who are actually going to coordinate and work as a team on a larger scale, play in a gaming community. There are plenty of people out there who are looking to team up with large groups of players and play games like Battlefront at launch. Join one of those communities. They exist by the handful. I mean, if you want teamwork, you need to be willing to chat and work with people. I don't think that you should ever really expect that sort of thing to work on a public environment, whether it be on PC or on console. When I play Battlefield with my friends on the Xbox One, we play in a private party and we talk to each other. So there's 4 or 3 of us or however many are playing that night. We're all communicating with each other. We're definitely not worried about communicating with the other people on our team. And I think the same thing is going to go for Battlefront. Despite the fact that you only have 2 people in a buddy system, if I'm playing with a group of 4 friends, we're just going to split up into 2 groups and we're still going to talk through party chat on the Xbox One. And the same would go as if I was playing on PC with some group like Praxis. We'd be in TeamSpeak and we'd all be talking in our chat channel no matter what sort of buddy system we were in, and we would be communicating. So people like to see a big push for teamwork inside of games like this, but I just don't think you can expect coherent teamwork in a public match setting. You shouldn't. Just play with your friends, have a good time, push for the objective, or get involved with a larger group, a larger community that is looking to fill up that 20-player team cap for each side of Battlefront, and then play as a team. I really think that's the best way to go about with that. But I'm interested to see more of how this whole buddy system actually works. The idea of sharing other unlocks and really making a heavy incentive to work with one other player in the battlefield. That's really cool. I really like the idea of that. It sort of has a, Han Solo and Luke Skywalker vibe to surviving on Hoth. I'm really interested to see how that all pans out. Now, apart from that, there's been concerns that people who have actually been able to play the game. I've heard bad things about the flight mechanics, of course. I can't personally comment on it because I wasn't involved in any of these YouTuber type events. But, it's just something I hope they get panned out. They have the time. They ran that technical alpha, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And I hope that they looked at the feedback that they got from people who played at E3 and all of the different gaming events, and they said, okay, people don't like the way the flying system works. How can we make it more accessible while still making it enjoyable for those people who are going to be a little bit more hardcore? And that, of course, is a big focus of Battlefront. DICE has made that very clear, that they want to make this a game that is accessible to everyone, and I'm okay with that. People think that that's a bad thing. But accessibility means larger numbers of players, and that just means that the game is going to have a longer multiplayer life. It's up to the veteran members of the community to make sure that they welcome new players and that they do their best to not just get frustrated with new people, but instead reach out, try and communicate with those people and see if they can't help them in any ways. This never happens in video games, I feel. Everyone just plays Battlefield 4, they've been playing it for the last 2 years, going on 3 years, and all they say when they see some new player who doesn't know what the hell they're doing is they curse at them under their breath, and then they never reach out to that player and say, hey, you want to join up with my squad? You want us to help you out? That's kind of, again, that's a personal player thing, do your best to kind of help new players, and a game like Battlefront is most definitely going to attract a lot of people who wouldn't otherwise play a first/third person shooter like Star Wars Battlefront. You just have to be prepared for that as someone who's been playing shooters all your life, and be ready to accept that. Either help those people or just stay out of their way and let them learn on their own pace. But I do like the focus on accessibility. I like the ability to switch between first and third person. I think it pulls away from any idea that this is somehow a Battlefield game with a Star Wars skin. No, it's very much a Battlefront game. You have those first and third person options. There's power pickups on the battlefield. This isn't about, some sort of crazy loadout with a rocket launcher, and everything just ready to go from the get-go. You're not going to see 50 people running around with like laser type sniper rifles. It's just, there's pickups on the map, and I think what they've shown so far to me just, it screams that they've done a lot of research and they've looked back to Battlefront to see what kind of made that game a little bit more special, and they're trying to do their best to adapt it to what is now a multiplayer focused gameplay experience. This is no longer the AI filled Battlefront that we know. This is a 20 versus 20 human PvP experience. So there's obviously a lot of things that we could look into there, but I just, to me it doesn't make sense to comment anymore, not having played the game. I'm just looking at what I've seen, and I'm hoping that you know, the increased level of accessibility blends well with, you know, making sure that the game is fun for people who have been playing shooters for their entire life to play as well. But there's a good sense of challenge. And then at the end of the day, winning or losing does in fact come down to some sort of teamwork, whether it be, you know, small groups or large groups. Teamwork is what needs to happen for a team to win. Shouldn't be about kills, you know, there shouldn't be a high focus on just doing as much damage to the other players. It should be on completing the objectives to help your team win. I think that alone will help make a big push for better non-direct communication between players in public matches. And it does seem that they're going for that. There, of course, are points given for assists, and more points seem to be given for actually tackling objectives. And the idea of the buddy system, I think, all kind of ties into an attempt to make sure that teamwork is at the forefront of the experience, or at least at the required success of the experience. We'll see how it all pans out. Of course, one thing that you see is completely different to millions and millions of players actually getting their hands in the game and then going out and playing with one another. But I'm definitely interested to see how all of that pans out. Now, in terms of concerns, am I upset that there are no space battles? This is something I've talked about previously. Yeah, I mean, I think space battles would have been a wonderful addition to the Battlefront. It's something that you know, a lot of us, I think, we're just expecting, and the fact that it's not there is a little bit saddening, especially when you consider the fact that there's a very good chance that EA and DICE are just going to add it as DLC down the road. Now, if they do that, I wouldn't be all that upset, as long as it's a nice, meaty expansion. Similar to what they did with Vietnam for Bad Company 2. That was a serious expansion. We had brand new maps, brand new vehicles, brand new weapons, a brand new setting. It was a lot of fun. It was a really great, practically standalone expansion for Bad Company 2. If they did something like that for Battlefront, and, you know, sometime next year we saw the introduction of space battles as this, you know, massive piece of DLC, I would be very happy about that. To me, it would say that DICE and EA both understood that they didn't have the time to make space battles a really great part of the experience. It would have just been tacked on, it would have been mediocre, the development time didn't allow for it, and they understood that. So instead what they did was release the game and then continue to work on that component and bring it to us at a later date, hopefully at a reasonable price point, with all of the bells and whistles that we would like to see in that sort of a component. If something like that happened, I would be very pleased indeed, but of course, time will only tell. Now, there is always the concern of like limited and timed DLC and all these exclusives that have been kind of just become an integral part of the industry, most definitely not for the better and most definitely for the worse. At least this time around, it appears that pre-ordering Star Wars Battlefront only gives you a 1-week early access to the free Battle on the Planet of Jakku DLC. This is free content that's going to be coming December 8th to everyone else. So literally pre-ordering gets you 7 days of early access. Hopefully that will kind of drive down the pre-order numbers on a game that definitely does not need to see high pre-order numbers, especially considering the failed launch of Battlefield 4. The game was just a mess when it launched. Now, on the other hand, Hardline had a much better release, but that was because there was a really big push on the open beta for Hardline. Now this is kind of where I want to start to close up this conversation. We recently saw the launch of the technical alpha that ran only on PC and was just given to random select members. It was a very small alpha. That's great. Hopefully DICE got something out of that, but it seems completely insane to me to only make a push for a very small technical alpha when you very well know that there are millions of people out there who would be more than ready to play a beta for your game and test it for you, break it for you in every possible way that you could ever imagine, and probably in a lot of ways that you could never imagine. That sort of feedback is invaluable to a development studio. If they do not run a beta for Battlefront before its release in October, I will be absolutely dumbfounded. It is a very smart move to run a beta for this game. Just do it. Like, there's no reason not to. You're gonna get so much data. You're gonna see so many bugs that you didn't even know existed in your game, whether they be in an online setting or in an actual gameplay mechanics setting. It would just be a really good thing for the launch of this game come October. So far, no news on that. We had that technical alpha. That also wasn't really announced, it kind of just happened. So hopefully they do something similar with the beta and they just let everyone get their hands on it on all platforms. If you're going to release a game on 3 different platforms, you should probably beta test on all of those platforms. It only makes sense. If you just beta test and alpha test on the PC, how can you know that the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One version aren't going to have problems? They're not the same game. They're not running on the direct same code. They're different games built for different consoles. Just give us a beta, DICE. That's basically what I'm saying at the end of the day. That is my biggest concern out of all of this, is that this game is going to release and it's going to be in the same broken state that Battlefield 4 was. The netcode and the connection issues that Battlefield 4 had at launch were horrific, and it took them nearly a year plus to resolve a lot of those issues, and they're still working on it. We do not need to see that happen with Battlefront. That would be a pretty big second strike for EA and DICE, and something that the consumer does not want to see and that they do not need to deal with. And nor do the critics. Your game's going to get bashed pretty hard if you release another title with the same sort of failures that Battlefield 4 had. Not to mention, this is under the Star Wars name, so you're going to attract some pretty harsh critics, just in the fact that this is a Star Wars game. Obviously I'm just some random YouTuber. They're probably not going to listen to me. They'll probably never even see this video. But I definitely urge those of you out there to make your voice heard whenever possible. You know, go on the Twitter accounts for DICE and for Battlefront and ask them, are you going to do a beta? Is there any chance we're going to get, you know, any sort of hands-on with this game before launch to help you guys sort of, you know, test the netcode and so on and so forth? And hopefully they recognize that a closed alpha test on one platform isn't enough and that they make something like this happen. But definitely spread the word. However you feel that you can get involved and get in touch with anyone at DICE or, you know, at Battlefront and EA, make your voice heard about the fact that you want to see this game beta tested by the public. That's really it for me. I'm very excited for the game at the end of the day. As I said, it's Star Wars. It's Star Wars. I really want it to be good. I want to mess around with all the cool gadgets and tools and weapons from the Star Wars universe and have a chance to experience them hands-on in amazing graphical fidelity that is provided by Frostbite with that wonderful sound design. And hopefully, when it all comes together, it creates a really memorable gaming experience, something that I'll be able to play with my friends and talk about on a weekly basis. You know, the same sort of experience that Battlefield 3 and even Battlefield 4 has granted my friends and I for many, many hundreds of hours. Let me know your hopes and concerns for Star Wars Battlefront. Whatever it is, throw it down in the comments section below. Let me know your thoughts on a closed beta. Do you think that a closed technical alpha on one platform is enough? I know that most of you are going to agree with me that it's most definitely not, but let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below anyways, and I will see you in the next one.